Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Right, today we have a Vauxhall Corsa 2012 model. I would like to discuss and go through how to test and how to use a fuel pressure gauge and how to test it and what are the different faults on the fuel pressure in rail system. First of all, we've got this pressure gauge, right? And I would like to connect it into the fuel rail, and then we have what we call a shredding valve, but some people they normally call a tire valve, but it's not a tire valve, but it looks like a tire valve, but it does different job. Before I connect it, I would like to go through how the fuel line it look like and how it operated. I will just draw it on the board now. Right, as you see here, we have what we call the fuel tank. I'll put a fuel tank. And then we have a lift pump for the lift pump. And then we've got a pipe going through there. Right, this is the inlet. This is the inlet pipe from the fuel tank all the way down to the fuel rails. And this is my fuel rail, and then I'm connecting 1, 2, 3, 4. For example, for this car, we've got 4 injectors, and those ones are the injectors. All right? Okay, we've got a return pipe all the way back to the fuel tank for the excessive fuel. Right, within this one, put return. That's the my return pipe going back to the tank, and this is my inlet from the fuel tank, fuel lift pump, all the way down to the injector. In some cases, we have a filter, the fuel filter, built inside of the fuel pump. Sometimes they may put somewhere through the line. And then, for example, I will put one just in here, I put a filter, right? But for this car is a Vauxhall Corsa 2012 1.2 and Ecotech system, and he doesn't have this fuel filter at all in here, but the fuel filter is actually built inside of the fuel tank, right? And then we've got the fuel rail here with the injectors, right? And what we go to discuss, I would like to repeat again how we go to test and check the fuel pressure on the rail, right? And somewhere through the rail into it, there is what we call the shredding valve, which is look like a tire valve, and it's not a tire valve, it's look like totally different. Right, up here, I have a different, is a 4th fuel rail. As you see here, I can't actually show you in there, but I've got the 4 injectors, the delivery pipe with the inlet pipe, which is going direct to the fuel rail. And then we've got here what we call a pressure relief valve. And this pressure relief valve is only actually limiting the amount of the fuel needed on the rail for the injectors. And normally, as we discussed, the fuel pressure is supposed on the pump is supposed to be higher on the rail. And this fuel pressure is like a diaphragm, like a spring, and it just releases and return it back to the fuel tank, the excessive tank. Right, normally, before I discuss how to test it, this one, I would like to show you on the car where to fit it, what to accept, and carry on. Right here, I'm using a auto data system, and I just put the vehicle detail, Vauxhall Corsa 1.2 2012 model, and it's a 1.2 Ecotech. As the manufacturer says, the fuel pressure is supposed to be between 3.7 to 3.9 bar. I don't know if you can see it clearly in there, but this is what we're supposed to have it. Right, okay, now what we got to do now, I will connect it, the fuel pressure gauge into the rail, and then we see what are the reading and what we have to get it from there before I move on how to diagnose the fault. Right, if I come in here now, let me turn on the light on my camera. Right, I've already set up my fuel pressure in gauge. As you see here, we have a 0, and the outer one is a PSI, and the inner one are the bars. Right, what I'm trying to do, I will take the shredding valve cap off, I will plug it in. Just thread it in. But all cars, they should have it. But some cars, they don't have it. If you don't have it, this shredder valve, and you don't have it, what you normally do, you just get in this the inlet fuel and pipe coming all the way down from the tank. You can actually bypass it and put your fuel pressure gauge in between the rail and the inlet pipe, and then you can see what are the pressure. Normally, when I turn it on, the ignition on, I'm supposed to get the pressure, and this pump is actually connected with the ignition feed. Right, I will turn it on the ignition, and it should have an 3 in bar at the moment, which is the range of what the auto data actually explained to us. What I'm trying to do, that pressure is supposed to be staying steady in there when I try to start the engine. Okay, I will fire up the engine. As you see there, the vehicle is on takeover, on idle, and it should have a steady needle with the gauge supposed to stay on that bar. What I'm trying to do, and bear in mind, gentlemen, we don't have any fault or any issue on this engine at the moment. What I'm trying to do, but I'm trying to actually explain to you how to use a fuel pressure gauge. What I'm trying to do now, I will drive it up the car, just over 2,500 RPM. I'm on 3,000 RPM, and the gauge is supposed to be staying normal, right? And what I'm trying to do now, I let it go, and I will rev it up all the way down. Somehow it's just cut off. Right, and that pressure is supposed to remain in that area, just under 3 in bar. Okay, right, what are the faults associated with the fuel pressure? Right, as we know, on the fuel tank, we have the lift pump, which is the fuel tank. The fuel pump is delivering direct all the way down to the rail. Right, in the old cars, yeah, and some new cars, they should have what they call the fuel pressure regulator, which regulates and allow only the amount of pressure we're supposed to have on the rail. Okay, now what are the faults associated with a faulty when we're having a less fuel in the rail? The fault as non-starting, cold start, lack of power, cutting off, very hard to, struggling to start, and these are all the faults associated with the fuel pressure in rails. Okay, what we normally do, I don't have, because I took from an engine, from an old engine, we normally take the pipe off. If we see any fuel coming out from the back of the diaphragm, that means it's a sign there's a faulty there's a faulty pressure regulator, and then you should change it. And that what causes a non-starting, yeah, what we call a leak-off leak-off test. If you see there's not any vacuum coming out of the pipe, because the pipes normally connect to the inlet manifold, and that means the pressure is not stable, and that will cause a lack of power and losing power, non-starting, and so on. Right. Okay, if I come back here, right, we still have the pressure fitted in there, and that's supposed to stay in. But in this car, this vehicle doesn't have the pressure regulator valve on top of the rail, but it's actually built inside of the fuel, inside of the lift tank with the fuel pump, on top of the fuel tank, and it's actually allowing the only amount of fuel and pressure we need it on the rail. And then normally, when we turn it off the car, we should have like 2 to 3 bar staying on the line. Otherwise, if you turn it off the car and you just turn it back again and you want to start it, that means there's a faulty pump in there, right? The other fault we normally associate with this is going to be the injectors. Now we actually talk about what's actually between the tank to the rail, and then we've got the rail and the injectors, right? If you have an overfueling injectors, we can actually test it on a different, I will do another video for that, how to test the injectors individually and what reading and what we accept in there. And for the time being, we actually discussed and explained to you how we check in the fuel pressure gauge and how we tested the vehicle on it Bear in mind, gentlemen, we don't have any fault on this vehicle. This video is only a purpose to explain to you how to connect the fuel pressure rail and then how we actually testing. As you see here, I've been talking for a few quiet minutes. The pressure and the gauge is still remaining on the same bar, and that is good. That means there's not a leak off test, or there's no return, there's not any pressure who's going back to the tank, and we don't have any issue. Now, I have to use my safety goggles, right, in order to just remove the pressure off the pressure gauge. Otherwise, there will be fuel anywhere, and we don't want that to happen. And I will do in a minute. And thank you very much for watching my clip. And I see you next time. Adios, au revoir, see you later. Thank you very much.